Sarvebhyo Namaha. Yesterday we had the pleasure to listen to Srimati Manjushree Hegde expound on Pujya Sri Sachidanandendra Saraswati Swamiji's commentary on the Adhyasa Bhashya of Shankara Bhagavad titled Sugama. Srimati Manjushree's talk was lucid, informative and absorbing. It did ample justice to Pujya Swamiji's efforts to try to and explain to us in such a detailed manner the import of Bhagavad Pada Shankara's Bhashyas. The various references she made, for instance, at the very beginning, to various schools of Indian philosophy as to the nature of Adhyasa or Avidya, she made a very pertinent and pointed observation that although the terms themselves, Avidya and Adhyasa, are not present in the canonical texts such as the Brahma Sutras and the Upanishads, etc., the concept is not totally unfamiliar to the Indian philosophical tradition, and she traced the development of the concept of sorts in various schools, the Sankhya, Nyaya, Mimamsa, even the Bauddha, for instance. And all these quotations or references only go on to attest to Srimati Manjushree's mastery over all these schools of Indian philosophy. It was a great pleasure to listen to her, and I am very sure that we're in for something more, if not similar, treat like yesterday's talk. And a couple of announcements. Tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, we have Dr. Giridhar Kaje talk to us about Swasthya Chintana. This is in continuation to his lecture series on the same subject. It is in the morning. And tomorrow evening, we have music recital, Karnataka Shastriya Sangeeta Yugalagana Karyakrama. It will be performed by Sangeeta Kalaratna Vidwan S. Shankar and Vidwan Ramani S. Shankar. We request all of your participation in these programs as well. On behalf of Adhyatma Prakasha Karyalaya and the Gokhale Institute of Public Affairs and all our listeners here, I express my heartfelt thanks to Srimati Manjushree Hegde.
सदाहं सम्प्रदायज्ञं संयमेन्द्रं सदाश्रयं सद्गुरुं सच्चिदानन्दं सदाचारं समाश्रये. A very good evening to everybody. Yesterday we discussed certain portions of the Adhyasa Bhashya with Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati's commentary on it, the Sugama. We'll continue with it today. Today we will briefly look into certain debates in Advaita Vedanta about Adhyasa, the different competing viewpoints and Swami's clarifications of the same, because this will help to clear our own doubts and make stronger our own positions and convictions. I really think that a discussion on this is very important for the layman and the scholar alike, because the wrong notions of avidya, I have to make a disclaimer here, I use the word avidya as a wrong way of thinking without really knowing that it is a wrong method of thinking. So this discussion about avidya can be very illuminating. Personally, Swami's very detailed, meticulous exposition about avidya was very helpful for me. It created a shift in my thinking. So I'm hoping that this discussion has the same potential. See, Swami takes up the Purva Paksha of Avidya for discussion in his commentary in the first section of the Adhyasa Bhashya. He calls it Avidyopadana Vada Nirakaranam. He takes this up for discussion, but it runs as an undercurrent throughout the entire work. Of course, it is more elaborately dealt with in his Mula Vidya Nirasaha, but it has been fleshed out very well in a lot of his other works, including the Sugama. While Shankaracharya himself did not get into a detailed or a sustained discussion about avidya of adhyasa, barring the adhyasa bhashya, of course, Swami had to do this because of how this concept developed post Shankaracharya. See, for Advaita Vedanta, one of the most difficult, problematic issues is to explain the world as we see it. The world of common experience, our day-to-day experience, which seems to stand in direct opposition or contradiction to the theories that it propounds. Advaita Vedanta is one of the only systems of philosophy, barring Buddhism and certain strands of Trika system of Kashmir. It is the only system that does not accept the reality of the world. Every other system of philosophy accepts that the world is real, is ultimately real, whether it is Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Purvamimamsa, Lokayata, Vishishtadvaita, Dvaita, Tantra, Agama. Every system accepts the reality of common experience. So Advaita Vedanta has to face the unique challenge of explaining away, or at least explaining the world as we see it. This is what is called as the hard problem of this system. Every system has a hard problem. For science, it is consciousness. How did a universe that was without subjective first-person experience, without a conscious experience, how did this universe develop such experience? This is the hard problem for science. For Christianity, theodicy is the hard problem. Why does the all-loving, all-powerful God create a world in which evil runs amok? Every philosophical system, every theological system has a hard problem that is concomitant with its presuppositions and its worldviews. For Advaita Vedanta, it is this: how to explain the world of common experience. Avidya plays a very important role in this. Like I mentioned earlier, the concept of avidya is not distinctive to Advaita Vedanta. Almost every school of Indian philosophy employs the concept of avidya in one way or the other. And also because this idea is there in the Vedas, in the Upanishads. You have Shvetashvatara, where you have Asman Mayi Srijate Vishvametat Tasmins Chanyo Mayaya Sannirutthaha Mayantu Prakatim Vidyan Mayinam tu Maheshwaram Tasyavayavi Bhutaishcha Vyaptam Sarvam Idam Jagat. You have Isha, the very famous Vidyancha, Yastad Vedo Bhayam Saha, Avidyaya Mrityum Tirtva, Vidyaya Mritamashmute. So the idea of avidya is there in the Upanishads. It's strewn throughout the Upanishads. And because the different systems of philosophy accept Shabda Pramana, they accept Veda as a Pramana, so they try to bring in the concept of avidya in one way or the other. And while it is true that avidya plays a key role in each of these different philosophies, a key role in the attainment of moksha, attainment of kaivalya, yet for Advaita Vedanta, it is more central, more deciding, and more essential. It is ironical that without avidya, there is no establishing of Advaita. Because if Advaita is the reality, if non-duality is the ultimate reality, then the only explanation for the undeniable perception of duality is ignorance of non-duality. If we cannot establish ignorance, then the perceived duality must itself be taken as the ultimate reality. This is why the concept of avidya has been subjected to vigorous and vicious attacks. The opponents of Advaita Vedanta have produced a vast polemic literature, vast amount of polemic literature aimed at refuting the tenability of this avidya. While the debate about avidya predates Shankaracharya, but the most vocal critics of avidya post Shankaracharya includes Bhaskaracharya, a Bheda Bhedavadin, Then you have Yamunacharya, a very great scholar of Vishishtadvaita. He criticizes the concept of avidya in his Samvit Siddhi. Following him, Ramanujacharya leveled the most reputed attack on avidya, opening his Shri Bhashya, his commentary on the Brahma Sutras, with a 140-page Mahapurva Paksha, showing 7 primary reasons why avidya is untenable. Saptavidha Anupapatti. This was followed by Shatadushini, Shatabhushini, Paramartha Bhushanam. The debate continues to this day. It is in response to these attacks, in order to meet the criticisms, in order to find answers for the questions raised, to the objections raised by the critics, the Advaita Vedantins modified and refined their positions over the centuries. Shankaracharya's disciple, direct disciple Padmapada is generally credited with clearly articulating and developing the concept of avidya. Because Shankaracharya himself did not get into a detailed discussion about this, he did not dwell on this. He stated unequivocally in his Adhyasa Bhashya that avidya is not logically tenable. Therefore, he did not see value in entering into discussions about the nature of avidya, the locus of avidya. He was interested in removing avidya, not investigating it. On multiple different occasions, Shankaracharya abruptly dismisses any question that has been raised about the locus of avidya, the ashraya of avidya. Where is avidya located? Where is it? To whom is avidya? Is it to the jiva? Is the jiva ignorant of its true nature? Or is it Brahman? Is Brahman ignorant of its true nature? Whose is avidya? When asked this question, Shankaracharya abruptly dismisses it. He does not answer the question. Kasya punarayam aprabodha iti chet yastvam pritchasi tasyata iti vadamaha. The avidya belongs to you who is asking this question. This is Shankaracharya's answer. This is Brahma Sutra Bhashya. In the Gita Bhashya, we see the exact same question. Atraha sa vidya kasya iti. And we see the exact same answer. Yasya drishyate tasyaiva. This is Gita Bhashya. The conversation does not end here in the Gita Bhashya. The conversation continues because the disciple is not satisfied. He tries to pursue it further. He asks, Kasya drishyata? To whom is it seen? Give me an answer. To whom is avidya seen? Shankaracharya only replies, Avidya kasya drishyate iti prashnaha nirarthakaha. This question that you ask is meaningless. It is like asking what existed before the Big Bang. Nirarthakaha. I'll give one last example of how reluctant Shankaracharya was to enter into this debate. In the Upadesha Sahasri, there's a conversation between a teacher and a disciple. The student asks the teacher, Kim Bhagavan, Dehatmano ritaretaraadhyaropana, Dehadi sanghata krita, athava atmakriteti. Who is it that mistakes one for the other? This is the definition of adhyasa, correct? That mistaking one thing for another or confusing one thing for another. So he's asking, who is it that commits this mistake? Who is it that confuses Atma for Anatma and Anatma for Atma? Dehadi sanghata krita athava atma kriteti. To this the teacher replies, Yadi dehadi sanghata krita athava atma krita kim tavasyat. What for you? Kim tavasyat? What difference does it make to you? Whether it is the anatma that is doing the superimposition, or if it is the atma that is confusing one for the other. Kim tavasyat? The disciple is not happy, not satisfied at all with this answer. He tries to argue it out in his own mind. He says, I'll just read it out. Yadi aham dehadi sanghata matraha tato mama acetanatvat pararthatvam iti na matkrita dehatmano ritaretara dhyaropana athaham atma paronyaha sanghatat chitimatvat swartha iti mayaiva chitimatatmane adhyaropana kriyate. So he is arguing both sides for himself. If I am the Dehadi Sanghata only, if I am merely the Dehadi Sanghata, the body-mind complex, this Dehadi Sanghata is achetana. It is not conscious. It is anatma. So that which is anatma cannot possibly superimpose one thing on the other. This is not possible. So it must be the conscious Atma who indulges in this superimposition. It must be the Atma who does this adhyasa. He comes to this conclusion on his own. To this, Shankaracharya replies, Ma karshihi tarhi. Don't do it then. If it is you, the Atman, who indulges in adhyasa, don't do it. This answer is like Buddha's answers. Buddha's refusal to engage in metaphysical speculations is famous. In the Majjhima Nikaya, his disciple Malunkyaputta demands that the Buddha answer the metaphysical questions of, is the world eternal or is it not eternal? Sassato loko tiva, assassato loko tiva, shashvata sassata. Is it finite or is it infinite? What is the relationship between the body and the soul? What happens after death? These are Malunkyaputtas questions. The Buddha simply refuses to be drawn into these arguments. He only says that you speak like the man who, when wounded by a poisonous arrow, demands to know who shot this arrow, to what caste he belonged to, Khattiyova, Vessova, Suddovati. Was he tall or was he short? The man who shot this arrow, is he tall or is he short? Dighova, Rassova, Majjimovati. With what type of bow did he shoot? With what type of arrow? With what type of poison? He demands to know these answers before he lets the surgeon treat him, before he lets the surgeon remove the poisonous arrow. You speak like that man. Buddha simply never encouraged this type of metaphysical speculations. He called them Dittivada, dogmatism. He was simply not interested in them. And this is exactly how Ramana Maharshi also responded to similar questions. He would say, who is asking this question? Find that out first. See, these answers might seem like a way of circumventing the logical difficulties of the metaphysical speculations. But this is why Shankaracharya wrote the Adhyasa Bhashya and opened it with the very, very bold statement, Itaretara Adhyasaha mittheti bhavitum yuktam. I accept the logical untenability of avidya. I concede this. I accept that avidya adhyasa is not logically tenable, it is not rationally explainable, and that is why I am not interested in discussing the nature of avidya, the locus of avidya. See, Sureshwaracharya also writes in his Taittiriyopanishad Bhashya Vartika, Pramanotpannaya drishtya yo vidyam drashtumichhati deepenasau dhruvam pashyet guhakakshigatam tamaha. He who is interested in understanding avidya through a pramana, pramanotpannaya drishtya yo avidyam drashtumichhati, he will sooner see darkness, tamaha, guhakakshigatam tamaha, tamaha in the interior of a cave with the help of a lamp, deepenasau dhruvam pashyet. He will sooner see darkness with the help of a lamp than avidya with a pramana. After Shankaracharya has clearly, openly acknowledged the untenability of avidya, of adhyasa, if Ramanujacharya comes and writes one Mahapurva Paksha of Saptavidaha Anupapatti, what to do? On the one hand, it is okay. It is okay for Ramanujacharya or Madhvacharya or any other philosophers of any other schools to raise objections. It's okay. What is not okay is for Advaita Vedantins to try to furnish logically tenable answers to these objections that have been raised. Because in order to make their answers logically tenable, to make their answers rationally appealing, they had to perform extreme gymnastics, extreme acrobatics. And in the process, they compromised the very fundamental tenets of Advaita Vedanta itself. Swami writes, भाष्यांतरकारोत्थापितानाम् आक्षेपाणां परिहारमात्रेण भगवत्पादसम्मताद्वैत संरक्षणं कृतम् इत्यभिमन्यमानाः भवन्तः कथं नापत्रपन्ते. He's so caustic, so brutal. Apatrapate means to be ashamed. How are you not ashamed of yourself? Nishprayojanam bhashya bahirbhutam yukti viruddhan chedam mithyabhuta bhavajnana varnanam ityastam tavat. This is what troubled Swami. This is why Swami spent his entire life trying to show where and how the corruptions in the philosophy occurred, where and how the deviations from the Shankaradvaita occurred, and what the Shuddha Shankara Prakriya is. See, the problem for the later Advaita Vedantins was this. If avidya is absolutely unreal, then knowing Brahman, Brahma Jidnyasa Kartavya, removal of avidya, removal of adhyasa, these things lose their meaning entirely. There is nothing to know, nothing to do. On the other hand, if avidya is absolutely real, then there is a real that is other than Brahman, equal to Brahman. This leads to Dvaita contradicts Advaita. Neither options seemed satisfactory to the later Advaitavadins, and this is why they proposed a new category of existence, new category of objects, objects that are not absolutely unreal, and also they are not absolutely real, neither real nor unreal. Sat asat vilakshanaha. I'll just outline their argument. Just as an object is presented to me, to my sense organ, pratyaksha, in correct perception, an object is presented before my sense organ in correct perception. So too, an object is presented to me in illusion. There is something that I'm seeing, there is an object that is presented in illusion. Say, for example, I see a 1 rupee coin lying there on the floor. I go to pick it up, and when I go closer, I realize that this is not a 1 rupee coin, it is instead a shiny piece of paper. This is adhyasa. I saw a coin where there was no coin. This is adhyasa. But the point is this. For this adhyasa to occur, I must have seen a 1 rupee coin sometime in my life. If I have never seen a 1 rupee coin in my life, or if a 1 rupee coin simply does not exist in the world, then it will not be possible for me to see a 1 rupee coin there lying on the floor. I will not be able to see, instead of the shiny piece of paper, I will not be able to see a 1 rupee coin there. This is the problem, in a sense that for adhyasa to take place, adhyasa can take place only between two objects that exist. If a 1 rupee coin simply does not exist, or if I have never seen a 1 rupee coin in my life, then this adhyasa cannot occur. To that extent, we have to admit the reality of the world of anatma. Because if it did not exist, then adhyasa is impossible. But we cannot say that it is ultimately real. Its cognition is contradicted by a later cognition. The cognition of the coin is sublated by the later cognition of the piece of paper. So it cannot be ultimately real. So this object of illusion, the object that is seen in illusion, cannot be said to not exist because adhyasa is impossible. It cannot be said to exist because Advaita is impossible. See the problem for the Advaita Vedantins. So it is that they proposed Sat Asat Vilakshanaha, Sad Asat Anirvachaniya. For the later Advaita Vedantins, the world is neither real nor is it unreal. It is anirvachaniya. Unfortunately, the moment we concede that we see the world, we have already assumed the position that I am a person. I am this body. This world is in front of me. This world is presents itself to me. It is pratyaksha. The moment we say this, we are already in avidya. The adhyasa is complete. Which is why Shankaracharya says, Tametam avidyakhyam atmanatmanor itaretaraadhyasam puraskritya sarve pramana prameya vyavaharaha laukikaha vaidikascha pravrittaha. The moment we assume the position of a pramatra who uses a pramana, whether pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, arthapatti, anupalabdhi, veda, does not matter what the instrument is. The moment I am the pramatra who uses a pramana to know the prameya, this entire operation occurs in avidya. We are already in the realm of avidya when we speak of world of common experience. This Shankaracharya calls this avidyavastha, realm of ignorance. Every vyavahara is pramana prameya vyavahara. Whether ordinary life or religious life, everything is based on the adhyasa that I am the body. Every shastra, whether Vedanta, Purva Mimamsa, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Christianity, Islam, it does not matter. It is based on the adhyasa that I am the body. So when the Vedas declare, Svarga Kamo Yajeta, Brahmano Yajeta, Shankaracharya says, Atmane Varnashrama Vayovasthade Visheshadhyasam Ashritya Pravartante. The injunction like Brahmano Yajeta, an injunction like this, proceeds or is based on further impositions of Varnashrama Vayovasthadi on the Atman. Further impositions of caste, of stage of life, of age. So it is extra adhyasa, Visheshadhyasa, Varnadhyasa, Ashramadhyasa, Vayovasthadhyasa. Surely the self is beyond these notions. So our life, our everyday life, begins with I as a person, as a pramatra. The moment I take the position as a pramatra, the adhyasa is complete. The moment I wake up in my room, on my bed, in my body, the adhyasa is complete. This is why Shankaracharya says, Sarve pramana prameya vyavaharaha laukikaha vaidikaha atmanatmanor itaretaraadhyasam puraskritya pravrittaha. This is Shankaracharya thug life moment, to be able to say this at the preface of the Vedanta Shastra. In the Upodghata of Vedanta Shastra, to say that this Vedanta Shastra is based on adhyasa, this is Shankaracharya. So it is that he does not get into a discussion about theorizing avidya or rationalizing the world. He only says, Tatraivam sati yatra yadadhyasaha tat kritena doshena gunena va anumatrena pisana sambadhyate. The Atma lies outside the realm of this adhyasa, this field of adhyasa. The Atma lies outside it, completely untouched by it, completely unaffected by it. Anumatrenapi sana sambadhyate. Now, because the post-Shankara Advaitins concede to a special category of existence of objects, Sat Asad Vilakshanaha, Sad Asad Anirvachaniya, they have to give a rationale for the existence of such objects, because this world is governed by the cause and effect theory. Karya Karana Sambandha. There is no Karya without a Karana. So if we concede that there is a world and there are illusory objects in the world, then we must also propose a Karana for this category of objects. The world is itself an object that belongs to this category, so we must propose a suitable Karana for this category of Karya. See, if you choose to play cricket, then the rules of the game apply to you. You're obligated to abide by them. Same thing for the field of avidya. If you choose to step into it, then you are bound by its rules. Shankaracharya made his arguments outside the field of avidya. The later Advaitins unfortunately could not transcend the boundaries of this field. So it is that they proposed an anirvachaniya avidya as the karana for the anirvachaniya world of objects. Now this avidya accordingly is an indefinable force. It is a shakti, avidya shakti, the material out of which this world is produced. This shakti is twofold. On the one hand, it obscures and conceals the Satchit Ananda Swarupa of Brahman. And on the other hand, it projects false manifestation of these false appearances. The capacity of Avidya Shakti to conceal the nature of Brahman is called Achadana or Avarana Shakti, and the capacity of this Shakti to project false appearance of the world is called Vikshepana Shakti, Vikshepa Shakti. Swami clarifies, Avidya Shaktihi iti na avidyayaha Shaktihi ityasmin arthe kintu avidyaiva Shaktihi iti kritva ityanupadam sphuti bhavishyati. See, the thing here is this. There are a lot of sentences in the Prasthanatraya texts and in Shankaracharya's commentary on the Prasthanatraya texts to justify this theory of avidya. It is very much possible to substantiate this claim of avidya using the original classical texts. It is very much possible. For example, the Brahma Sutra, Tad Ananyatvam Arambhana Shabdadibhyaha. In Shankaracharya writes his commentary on this sutra, he says, Sarvajnasyeshvarasya Atmabhute iva avidya kalpite namarupe tatvanyatvabhyam anirvachaniye samsara prapancha bija bhote sarvajnasyeshvarasya maya shaktihe prakritirite na shruti smrutyor abhilapyete. This is Shankaracharya's commentary. Nama Rupa, name and form, avidya kalpite, created by ignorance. Tatvanyatva anirvachaniye, not real, not unreal. Tatvanyatva anirvachaniye. This Shakti, this avidya Shakti is Sarvajnasyeshvarasya Maya Shaktihi. It is called as Prakriti in the Vedas and the Smriti. This is Shankaracharya's commentary. In the Gita Bhashya, he says, Avidya Lakshana Prakritihi Suyate Utpadayati Sacharacharam Jagat. You will find so many instances, the words like Trigunatmika, Vaishnavi Maya, Moola Prakritihi, Avyakritam, Moola Vidya, Anirvachaniya, Ishvara Shaktihi. These words are repeatedly used by Shankaracharya throughout the classical texts. And in multiple places, he talks of avidya as the cause of creation. He talks of the nature of Brahman being concealed by avidya. Paramartha Rupam, Brahmaswarupam, not sure I entirely remember it. Paramartham Brahmaswarupam, Nasti iti Abhava Darshanam, Avaranatmakam Lakshanam Lingam. The Lakshana Linga of Avarana is the fact that the non-adarshana or abhava darshana of the Brahma Swarupa is a linga for avarana. This is Gita Bhashya. Shankaracharya gives multiple instances. He talks of this avaranatmika avidya in many places. So really, if you want to justify avidya as an indefinable power that conceals Brahman on one hand and simultaneously projects the false appearance of the world on the other hand, you will find enormous amount of evidence in the classical texts. And further, these ideas are found in other systems of philosophy also. A certain stance of Shaivism, the Trika variant of non-duality, where Sadashiva has 5 eternal functions: Tirodhana, Srishti, Sthiti, Samhara, and Anugraha. This Tirodhana is very much like Avidya Shakti. It conceals the true nature of Sadashiva, limits him, and enables the creation of the world. This Tirodhana theory is very well developed in these systems. They talk of Maya, they talk of 3 types of Mala that further limits Sadashiva. Then Shuddha Tattvas that further limit him and enable the creation of different types of beings. And finally, it is through Anugraha, grace, that the veil is lifted and the reality is recognized, the absolute reality is recognized for what it is. So these ideas are there everywhere. So it's very easy to pick them up. It's very possible that one system influenced the other and vice versa. This is why Swami differentiated Shuddha Shankara Prakriya from its later developments, because it is different from these complicated theories and speculations for which you might find corroboration in the classical texts, but you will not find corroboration in your experience. Shuddha Shankara Prakriya, on the other hand, is entirely verifiable in your own experience. See, Swami reintroduced, I have to use the word reintroduce because it is a method forgotten by post-Shankara Advaitins, reintroduced the method of reading the Prasthanatraya texts, a method to read the commentary of Shankara on the Prasthanatraya texts. How to read these texts, there is a method to it, the method of Adhyaropapavada Tarka. Swami writes that those who accept avidya as a Shakti, they rely on a different method of interpretation, not the Adhyaropapavada Tarka that is propounded by the Sampradaya and by Shankaracharya. He writes, Bhagavatpada Sammatadhyaropapavada Prakriyat Vilakshanam Avidya Shaktyupadana Prakriyam Avalambhamananam Matamidam. Adhyaropapavada is a very sophisticated technique, a language strategy that is used to convey the truth about the self, about Brahman. And unless we know how to decode or how this technique has been employed by the Prasthanatraya texts, we will never be able to understand the true import of these texts. Adhyaropapavada involves 2 steps, Adhyaropa and Apavada. Adhyaropa is to temporarily ascribe certain qualities and attributes to Brahman. Temporarily attribute certain qualities and attributes to Brahman. Qualities that it does not possess, attributes that don't characterize Brahman. Temporarily, intentionally ascribing such qualities and characteristics to Brahman with the sole intention of removing natural or undeliberated ideas about Brahman. This is Adhyaropa, the first step of the technique. Apavada, retraction, the second step of the technique, where the deliberated superimpositions are retracted. Whatever was superimposed, whatever quality was ascribed to Brahman is now retracted. The initial superimposition serves to remove the previously wrongly believed attributes of Brahman, and the retraction, apavada, serves to negate even these very superimposed attributions. This is how the Prasthanatraya texts work. The texts first temporarily ascribe some imaginary characteristic to Brahman. Imaginary because these characteristics don't characterize Brahman. Later, the very same texts retract their earlier statements. They contradict their earlier statements. This is how the texts work. Both statements, the attribution and the later retraction and contradiction, together form this technique. They must be read together. First Adhyaropa, then Apavada. Adhyaropa serves to remove natural superimpositions. Apavada negates the pedagogical superimpositions so as to avoid its ultimate reification. Swami writes, Adhyaropa prakriyayaha jivitam idam yan mithya vikalpanape brahmanyadhyaropya tatra adhyaropitad anyasya pratidvandvinaha pratishedhaha tataha tasyapyadhyaropasya adhyaropitasyape apavada iti. The essence of the method of adhyaropapavada, adhyaropa prakriyayaha jivitam idam. The essence is yan mithya vikalpan, imaginary characteristics, brahmani adhyaropya, attributed to Brahman, adhyaropitat anyasya pratidvandvinaha pratishedhaha. Whatever is incompatible with these superimposed characteristics get negated. Pratishedhaha. Tataha. Then later, tasyapi adhyaropitasya apavada iti. The falsely attributed characteristics are also later negated. He continues, एवं सर्वविधाध्यारोपित प्रतिषेधेनैव ब्रह्मस्वरूपं शक्यावगमनम् नान्यप्रकारोऽस्ति तस्यावगमनायेति विस्फुटम् उद्घोषितं प्रस्थानत्रय भाष्येषु. He says, एवं, in this way, सर्वविध अध्यारोप प्रतिषेधेनैव ब्रह्मस्वरूपं शक्यावगमनम्. The true nature of Brahman can become known, can be comprehended only through the method of adhyaropapavada. This is clearly and loudly proclaimed, declared in the Prasthanatraya Bhashya of Shankaracharya. Visphutam udghoshitam Prasthanatraya Bhashyeshu, that there is no other way to comprehend Brahman. Nanya prakaroste tasyava gamanaya. Gaudapadacharya writes very beautifully in his Karikas. I'll just read it out. He says, स बाह्याभ्यन्तरे अजेह्यात्मतत्त्वे निर्विशेषेऽपि उपदेशार्थमेव अध्यारोप्य अतद्धर्मान् तत्त्वम् उपदिश्य उपदेशकार्ये निर्वृत्ते तत्पूर्वं यद्यद्व्याख्यातं तस्य तस्य अपरमार्थतां ज्ञापयितुं श्रुतिः स्वयमेव निह्नुते. So beautifully, so clearly said. What more can one say? He's saying that for the purpose of instruction only, upadeshartham eva, Veda attributes characteristics to the self that it in fact does not possess. Adhyaropya atadharman. Upadesharthameva adhyaropya atadharman. When the self has thus been taught, tattvam upadishya, upadeshakarye nirvritte, the work of positive instruction is complete. Then the Veda itself retracts whatever it had previously taught. Yadyad vyakhyatam, tat purvam yadyad vyakhyatam, tasya tasya aparamarthatam jnapayitum shrutihi svayameva nihnute. Absolute lucidity, absolute clarity. I'll just give a small example of how this method works, and then we can see how avidya is an example of this. I'll take a Gita shloka. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptihi dhirastatra namuhyate. In response to Arjuna's vishada of killing his bandhavaha, Krishna consoles him and tells him to not worry about death because yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara, the way the body undergoes the different stages of kaumara, yauvana and jaravastha, the childhood, youth and old age. Tatha dehinaha dehantara praptihi, the Atman or acquires different bodies through transmigration, one body after another. If this body goes, it's okay. There's another body waiting. Vasansi jirnani yatha vihaya navani granhati naroparani tatha vihaya sharirani anyani sanyati navani dehi. See, a very superficial understanding of this shloka. At this superficial level, it seems as if the shloka is saying that Atman transmigrates from one body to another. But if this is the case, then it raises certain questions. If the Atman is Nishchala and it is all pervasive, then how is it possible for Atman to transmigrate from one body to the other? What does it mean to say that the Atman changes bodies like we change clothes? The two statements are contradictory. If Atman is Nischala and all-pervasive, then it cannot transmigrate from one body to another. What does it mean to say the sky transmigrates? If it's all-pervasive, what is it transmigrate from one position to another? It's not possible. The statements are contradictory. The answer lies in the method of Adhyaropapavada. When the Gita says explicitly, Dehinosmin yatha dehe, Kaumaram yauvanam jara, when the text says this explicitly, it is not to say that Atman transmigrates from one body to the other. This is not the intention of the shloka. This is not how it is supposed to be read. We have to consciously discard the positive meaning that the sentence conveys and look for the misconception that it is targeting. What is this sentence negating? What misconception does it remove? The idea of transmigration is deliberately superimposed upon Atman with the sole intention of establishing its avikriyatva, avikaritva. Shankaracharya writes in his commentary, Tasam prathamavastha nashe na nashaha, dvitiyavasthopajane na upajananam atmanaha, kintarehi, avikriyasyaiva, dvitiya tritiyavastha praptihi. The idea that Atman transmigrates is Adhyaropa. It is the first step of the procedure, of the technique. This Adhyaropa is deliberately used in order to remove the misconception that Atman undergoes vikara. Because we believe so strongly that we are the body, that we are born, that we will die. This idea is so strongly, so deeply rooted in us that in order to convince us otherwise, the texts superimpose transmigration upon Atman. By doing this, by situating transmigration in Atman, what is the text doing? The text is limiting birth and death to the body alone. It is the body that is born. It is the body that dies. Atman is not born. It does not die. It is avikara. To show this Adhyaropa, this superimposition is later retracted. So we cannot read these texts without understanding how to decode them. This is why Shankaracharya said, Tatha hi sampradaya vidam vachanam. Adhyaropapavadabhyam nishprapancham prapanchate. That which cannot be expressed, nishprapancham, is expressed through the method of Adhyaropapavada tarka. Sureshwaracharya also writes, Bhranti prasidhya anudyartham, Bhranti prasidham artham anudya, Bhranti prasidhya anudyartham, Tattvam Bhranti Badhaya, Ayam Netyupadeshyata, Tathaivam Tattvamityapi. Now comes Swami's masterstroke, the Copernican revolution, the paradigm shift, the entire debate about the nature of avidya, the locus of avidya that has gone on for centuries. Swami says, understand this, that avidya, the very concept of avidya is an adhyaropa. It is a deliberate pedagogical superimposition that will be retracted later. It is an adhyaropa. Swami writes, Asti kaschit adhyaropo yaha sarvesham adhyaropanam moola hetuhu. The adhyaropa, which is sarvesham adhyaropanam moola hetu, primary adhyaropa, on the basis of which the other adhyaropas can be done. Yasmin satye itara bhrantayo atmanam labhante anartha hetavashcha bhavanti swasva jivita kale. Ata eva tam avidya shabdena vishimshanti vedantaha tad badhanena tattvaswarupa nirdharanam jnanam cha vidya shabdena. A complete masterstroke. With one strike, the ball is out of the stadium. Avidya is not mula vidya, it is mula adhyaropa. It is an instance of instruction with no ultimate ontological status. It is used for a specific purpose temporarily and later retracted after the purpose stands served. To illustrate how this works, Swami furnishes a beautiful story and analogy a very popular story, but I'll read it out because he has written it. Kashchit kila dhanadhyah shreshthi mumurushuhu swaputraan ahuya sapremo vacha saptadasha khalo madiya mattamatangaha mamedam charamanushasanam yajyeshtho yushmakam anubhavat vardham tatsankhyayaha dvitiyaha tritiyamsham bhajato kanishtaha punaha navamamsham haratu iti. A rich man who possessed 17 elephants, on his deathbed, he told his 3 sons to divide the 17 elephants between them in such a way that the eldest son gets exactly half the total number of elephants. Jyeshtaha anubhavatu ardham tatsankhyayaha. The second son must get 1/3 the total number of elephants, and the youngest son must get 1/9 the total number. The sons are left bewildered. How to do this? Half of 17 is 8.5. How to give 8.5 elephants to the eldest son? 1/3 is it? 1/3 of the total number has to be given to the second son. 1/3 of 17 is 5.6. Then 1/9 of 17, 1.8. How to divide this? How to distribute the elephants in this manner? What to do? Shall we cut the elephants? They decided to take the matter to the court, to the judge. Teha putraha pituruttara kriyadikam niravartya yavat pitur nirdeshanusarena hastinaha vibhajayitum pravartante tavat saptadashamita sankhyaam dvabhyam tribhihe navabhihe vapavartayitum ashaknuvanaha katham idam karyam ityativa khinnaha nyayasthanametya pradvivakaya nyavedayan. The Vivaka, the judge, was a very wise man. He thought about this problem and came up with a solution. He said that I will lend you one of my elephants. Yadyaham madiyakam ekam hastinam dadyam tarhe kim yuyam tadapi svikritya pituryuthe melayitva piturabhishta prakarena gajaus tattadamsha sankhyakan haratum anumanyadve. He lent them one of his elephants. Now, 1 plus the 17 that they already had, you have 18 elephants. Now, half of that 18, 9 went to the eldest son. 1/3 of 18, 6 elephants went to the second. And 1/9 of 18, 2 elephants went to the youngest son. So the total number of elephants that have been distributed, you have 9 plus 6 plus 2, you have 17. 1 left over, that is the judges. Did any of the sons get the 18th elephant? No. But was this 18th elephant absolutely useless? Did it serve no purpose? It did. It served a purpose. It solved a problem. And then when the problem stood solved, it was returned back to the judge. Avidya is exactly like this. No avidya really exists. It is superimposed for a specific pedagogical purpose temporarily, and when the purpose is over, when its pedagogical use is over, it is retracted subsequently, adhyaropa and apavada. And this is the real reason why Shankaracharya refuses to be drawn into discussions about nature of avidya, locus of avidya, because these questions are truly nirarthakaha. If avidya does not exist, what to talk about its locus and what to talk about its nature? Sureshwaracharya writes, Deshakaladya sambandhat Deshakalader moha karyataha nanutpannam adhagdam va jnanam ajnanam astyataha. Nanutpannam adagdham va jnanam ajnanam astyataha. There is no utpatti of jnana, no dahana of avidya. Both vidya and avidya are adhyaropa. They are deliberate superimpositions which will be retracted at a later stage. In order to really understand the absolute non-existence of avidya, the absolute non-reality of avidya, we have to turn to the method of the avasthatraya prakriya. Just a second, I'll just take a break. a very, very important contribution of Swami's. The first very important contribution of Swami's is the reintroduction of the method of Adhyaropapavada Tarka. The second very important contribution is the re-establishment of the method of Avasthatraya Prakriya as the most important method to grasp the nature of the self. Swami always said that the Advaita tradition has undergone two corruptions since the time of Shankaracharya and Sureshwaracharya. One conceptual and the other methodological. Conceptual corruption is the introduction of the concept of Mula Vidya, and the methodological corruption is the eclipsing of the method of Avasthatraya Prakriya by other inadequate methods. Avasthatraya is the most important method to understand the nature of the self. Shankaracharya called this Svaprakriya. And following him, Swami titles the third kanda of his Mula Vidya Nirasaha as Svaprakriya Nirupanam. In the Gaudapada Karika Bhashya, Shankaracharya writes, Jneyam etanyeva trini. The three avasthas of Jagrat, Swapna and Sushupti. Jneyan etanyeva trini. Etad vyatirekena jneyanupapattehe. There is nothing to know outside of these three. Sarvapravaduka kalpita vastunaha atraivantar bhavat. Everything is included in the three avasthas. Avasthatraya Prakriya is basically a variety of the Adhyaropapavada Tarka. It is not different from it. It is an application of Adhyaropapavada Tarka. Yet, it is not simply one variety of Adhyaropapavada Tarka. It is a method of thinking. This is what differentiates Advaita Vedanta from every other school of philosophy. Because every other school of philosophy limits its analysis to the contents of the waking state only. They completely ignore the contents of the dream state and the contentless experience of the Sushupti. The three states are not analyzed, and this is why Swami judged the other philosophical systems, every other philosophical system, Indian and Western. Swami judged it to be inherently inferior and ultimately inadequate to reveal reality. I'll first demonstrate how the Avasthatraya Prakriya works is a method of thinking, and then we can discuss avidya in this slide. Swami deals with this in great detail in his Mula Vidya Nirasaha, Vedanta Prakriya Pratyabhijna, Avasthatraya Chandrike, then you have Paramartha Chintamani. He has dealt with it in great detail in these works, but it runs as an undercurrent through all of his other works as well. I'll take a common example and use that as the example to demonstrate this method itself. Say, for example, in the waking state, you fracture your hand and you are in a great deal of pain. You are undergoing immense suffering. The pain is intolerable. And then you fall asleep. You feel the pain no more. There is no more pain. A scientific explanation of this is that in the state of Sushupti, the brain shuts down. It does not process the pain anymore. Therefore, you do not feel the pain anymore. This is a scientific explanation of why you don't feel pain. Vedanta Shastra says no. In the state of Sushupti, the I am, the Spurana I am, is not there anymore. Therefore, there is no brain, no body anymore. There is no pain in the body anymore. If the I is, the body is. The I is not, the body is not. Swami says, it is impossible to arrive at this conclusion unless you learn to think in terms of your experience only. This is the way to analyze the three states of Jagrat, Swapna and Sushupti, to adamantly stick to analyzing only your experience of that particular state. A key word here is experience, your experience, anubhava. This experience does not refer to the transactional experiences of every day. If I say that I stand here, I see you, I speak, this is my experience. If I say this is not the experience that Vedanta refers to. This is not the anubhava that is a pramana for Brahman. This is the experience of this individual. The person and personality, this is the experience that belongs to the person and personality. And this experience cannot be a pramana for Brahman. The anubhava that is talked about in Vedanta cannot belong to the realm of avidya. It must necessarily precede the realm of avidya. It must necessarily precede the idea that I am this person, I am this personality. When we say anubhava is a pramana for Brahman, it has to transcend this particular transactional experience. Every other pramana belongs to the realm of avidya. It begins after we have assumed the position of a person of this body. If I say I see you, I hear, I speak, this experience is pratyaksha. Pratyaksha is based on the indriya vyapara. The indriya vyapara is already based on the adhyasa that I am the body. So this experience that we are talking about here is already adhyasa. It is in adhyasa. This is why Shankaracharya writes, Dehendriyadishu aham mamabhimana rahitasya pramatritva anupapatto pramana pravritti anupapattehe nahindriyanya pratyakshadi vyavaharaha sambhavati na chadishthanamantarena kaschid pratyakshadi vyavaharaha sambhavati na chadishthanamantarena indriyanam vyaparaha sambhavati na chanadhyastatma bhavena dehena kaschid vyapriyate na chaitasmin sarvasmin asate asangasyatmanaha pramatritvam upapadyate na cha pramatritvam antarena pramana pravrittirasti tasmat avidyavad vishayanyeva pratyakshadini pramanani shastrani cha. Swami writes, it's a paragraph, I'll just read it out. Avagate, that is ascertainment. Adhyavasaya, the final understanding or determination, the nishchaya, and anubhava are the equivalents that are used by Shankaracharya. The word anubhava in Sanskrit is used to denote immediate apprehension, whether by one of the senses or by the mind itself. It is well known how we intuit color with the help of the organ of sight, how we intuit joy or sorrow, fear or curiosity without any assistance of reason. All such intuitions, however, are events in time. So they are all born and cease to exist in time. But how are we aware of senses and the sensations themselves? How do we come to know the mind or its intuitions themselves? And how do we come to know the presence or absence of mind itself together with its various modifications? The senses cannot objectify and know themselves, nor can the mind know itself, and much less is it possible for a mind or the senses to be aware of their own absence. Nevertheless, it is common knowledge that we do know when the mind or the senses function and when they cease to function in such states, for example, as deep sleep. Now, this faculty, which enables us to have direct insight, is what is called anubhava in Vedanta. This is what has been rendered by intuition here. Sakshat means without upakarana. This experience is without pramana. To think like this requires a paradigm shift. We require immense training to be able to think like this. If there ever is a practice of Advaita Vedanta, there is no practice, there is no technique. But if ever there is a practice, then it is this. How to analyze the three states of the three avasthas. We require certain training, a certain teaching to be able to do this. So this can possibly count as Vedantic practice. Because most of us lack this training. This is the reason why we do not understand Vedanta. And this is true of every other philosophical school. The problem with the other philosophical schools is an incorrect analysis of the three states. I'll just show you some examples very quickly, a few examples of how the mistakes have been done because of incorrect analysis of the three states. In the system of Sankhya, for example, the conception of Purusha is very similar to the conception of Brahman in Advaita Vedanta. Tasmatcha viparyasat siddham sakshitvam asya purushasya. Sakshitvam asya purushasya. Purusha is conscious witness, awareness devoid of content. Prakriti, on the other hand, is non-conscious, insentient object, that which is experienced. Purusha wrongly identifies itself with Prakriti because of avidya, and this is the cause of samsara, of dukkha, of bandha in the system of Sankhya. And with the dawning of the knowledge of non-identity between Purusha and Prakriti leads to Kaivalya in the system of Sankhya. Kaivalya is kevalasya bhavaha. The terms and ideas seems very familiar to Advaita Vedanta, but there are many differences between the two systems. But one important difference is that in the system of Sankhya, Purusha is not one. Sankhya accepts a multiplicity of Purushas, as many Purushas as there are conscious individuals. Why was there a need to postulate multiplicity of Purushas? For the proponents of Sankhya, if there is only one Purusha, then the problem is this. With that Purusha attaining Kaivalya, the world must stand liberated. Brahman attaining or realizing its true nature, the play must come to an end. But it does not. So there must be as many Purushas as there are conscious individuals. Even the system of Nyaya argues like this. In the system of the Nayayikas, Mithya Jnana is of two types. First Mithya Jnana, first wrong understanding is of the self. Wrong understanding that the self is a body-mind entity that undergoes pain and pleasure. Second Mithya Jnana is about the nature of the world. The wrong understanding that the objects of the world are worthy of attachment. This is the second Mithya Jnana, two types of Mithya Jnana. For the Nayayika also, the identification of self with the body is the result of Mithya Jnana. So as long as there is identity with the body, there is accumulation of desire, accumulation of karma, then the cycle of birth and death. So this identity must be dissolved. Remove Mithya Jnana, the identity stands dissolved. The identity stands dissolved. World stays as it is, self stays as it is. Because in the system of Nyaya, the world is as real as the self itself. So both stand as it is. The connection between the two stands severed. This is Nyaya. But even the system of Nyaya accepts a multiplicity of Atman. There are innumerable Atman. As many Atman as there are conscious individuals. Innumerable Atman. Each Atman is understood to be all-pervasive, eternal Dravya in the system of Nyaya. Dravya is a very technical term. It does not mean material like stone, paper and all. But they accept the multiplicity of Atman. Forget the other systems of philosophy. The reason for postulating Mula Vidya in Advaita Vedanta. Vachaspati Mishra says, there are as many, not only are there as many jivas as conscious individuals, but there are as many avidyas as there are conscious individuals. Each person's avidya is different from the other person's avidya. What is the need to postulate this? If one jiva attains mukti, then the other jivas are not attaining mukti. This is the problem. Even the idea of avidya lesha in the jivan mukta, where are these arguments stemming from? Swami asks, is this your experience? Is this your anubhava? When you say that I see a jivan mukta and I see that he suffers death and disease like I do, and therefore I conclude that there must be avidya lesha in him, Where is this judgment coming from? Who am I speaking as when I make these pronouncements? I'm speaking as a person and a personality who belongs to this world of multiplicity. I stand in the world of multiplicity and make these judgments. This is not anubhava, this is avidya. Swami asks, in Sushupti, did you see the Jivan Mukta and his avidya lesha? Was there a multiplicity of jivas? Did the other one jiva attaining liberation did not liberate others? Is this there in the Sushupti? No. Anubhava is not loka prasiddha indriya anubhava. It refers to that experience which precedes the realm of avidya, which is without pramana. Whatever you speak as a person, as a personality, there only fail, because we cannot philosophize from this position. We cannot analyze from this position. This is why every other philosophy fails, because it operates within the realm of avidya. It is very important to... This is what Swami actually says. If there is ever a method of avidya, then this is what it is. To learn to think outside this realm is how you train yourself. Swami translated Anubhava as universal intuition, common universal experience that is not limited to particular or specific or special individuals, but that intuition, that experience, which is available to each and every one of us, irrespective of caste and gender and age and mental capacities. That Anubhava is the touchstone, the cornerstone of Advaita Vedanta. Shankaracharya writes about the three states, Eshaiva Prakriya, Vedantabhiyuktaihi, Adrita. In the Gaudapada Karika Bhashya, the Avatarika, he says, Vedantartha Prakriya Tattva Nirdharanartham Idam Prakaranam Prastuyate. The method is primary, the method of Avasthatraya Prakriya is used to get clarity on the matter. Tattva Nirdharanartham. This is the maximum that we can do. There's nothing much more than this that we can do in DVG's words. Lakshya tappade charisu samanya dharmagala moksha svata siddha mankutima. I'll end my talk with a Shankaracharya's namaskriya to his guru, Gaudapadacharya. Prajna Vaishakha Veda Khrubita Jalanidhehe Veda Namnon Tarastham Bhutanyalokya Magnanyavitara Janana Ghora Graha Ghore Samudre Karunyat Uttadhara Amrutamidam Amaraira Durlabham Bhuta Hetoho Yastam Pujyabhipujyam Paramagurum Amum Pada Padair Natosmi. Thank you very much for coming.